Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. We're going to review a plugin today. It's called the Magma Tube Channel Strip. So we're going to try it out and see how it sounds. We also have some guests, which I really like having because then you get multiple people's perspective. It is a channel strip by Waves. It's called the Magma Tube Channel Strip. I'm looking over here because I'm looking straight at it. We're also including 3 other reviews with Joe Carrell, Ali Maguire, and the wonderful Mr. Adam Steele. So that's Joe, Ali, and Adam. Okay, let's get stuck in. It looks pretty straightforward. Here is a mix that I did in a video recently where I think the vocal needs the most amount of help. So why don't we put it on the vocal? So the vocal gets a little lost here and there. It definitely needs some compression, maybe a little bit of drive for a bit of attitude to cut over those guitars and drums. So let's turn it on and see how it works. Well, first of all, it's got a drive control on it, so that's useful. That's what I want.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through. I can be a superhero.
Now, it's making it louder, so you're all going, oh my God, it's making it louder. But in all reality, I actually wanted it to be louder. It was a little lost in the track, but we can try and loudness balance it for you. Let's have a look.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through. I can be a superhero, deflecting all the things that they may say to you.
So let's bypass.
I can be your undercover lover.
Here's with it on.
I can be your undercover lover.
What I wanted to do is I wanted to distort the louder stuff a little bit more so that the softer stuff kind of creeps through more. Also, I wanted to add some saturation, some harmonics, which only, of course, drive can do. Well, not only, but what drive can do. I'm also going to, let's high pass it. So here's with it off.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through.
Here's with it on.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through.
So it's definitely starting to saturate those louder peaks, so that's nice. Let's give it some brightness.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through.
Let's see what those mids are like.
I can be your undercover lover.
Looks like I've got 100 hertz, 1.6 and 5K. Kind of like the 1.6.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through.
Bypassed.
I can be your undercover lover.
On.
I can be your undercover lover.
Let's bring it down a bit because that 1.6 is definitely putting its nose across. I'm just going to pull it down so we can get an equal balance.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through.
Bypassed.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through.
So some notes are being lost without that additional drive and without the forwardness of the 1.5 and, of course, the brightness of the high boost there. So I'm liking that. We've already high passed it at 60. Maybe let's try it at 110.
I can be your undercover lover.
Bypassed.
I can be your undercover lover.
Okay, so those are pretty equal in volume. Let's see if that EQ boost and that evenness that the drive is creating is enough to keep it in the mix. So that's without it on, and you can hear on that, I can be, that part there gets a little lost. Let's see if that drive and that mid and high end boost helps it sit more evenly now. It's definitely better. I would want to turn it up completely. So before we try that, let's put some compression on it.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through. I can be a superhero, deflecting all the things that they may say to you.
Let's hit the expander as well.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through. can be a superhero, deflecting all the things that they may say to you.
That's really working nicely on those ones I want to push up.
I can be your undercover lover. I can be whatever gets you through.
So let's go into bypass.
I can be your undercover lover.
And now with the effect on.
I can be your undercover lover.
Far more even. Let's put that in the track. Bypass. Whole phrase with the plug-in on now. Great. It's really starting to work well now. Quite a straightforward plugin. I like this. Not a lot to think about. I do want to turn it up, but I would also want to turn up the unprocessed. So I'm just going to generally turn the whole thing up. It looks like I've got some volume automation on it. So I'm just going to take the whole thing generically up. I want to drive it harder. It's an aggressive song. Loving it. I'm actually going to bring up the whole vocal even more. There you go. Maybe back off the drive a little bit. I like it. I like how he's got some 700 in there, and by us boosting the high mids and the mid above it, like 1.6, it's reduced some of that nosiness, but it's still there, but in a way I kind of like. The high passing up to 110 helps roll off excessive amounts of lows that we do not need, and the drive is evening everything out with, of course, the compression doing the same, and the expander filling in, pushing up some of those quieter words. Pretty tasty. Pretty tasty. Let's try it on something else before we move over to see what our other reviewers think. The only other thing I would say on this track is maybe to go to a snare. I know that sounds kind of silly, but I like a little bit of saturation on a snare. So that's the live snare. Here's with the addictive snare. So the snare's adding that ring. Let's see if a little bit of drive can sort of like squish it in together. What I like about doing that is quite often with the snare, if we use the transient to help it cut across, that's fantastic. But then you end up with no body on the snare. And you can actually suck the transient in and give it a little bit more body by just adding a bit of saturation. So as is typical of Waves, when they introduce something, they sell it super cheap. So it's at $29 whopping dollars, which for a channel strip plugin is fairly cheap. I think it's one of those things that you need to decide whether you want another one in your arsenal and what it is you want from a channel strip. I do like this one on the aspect of, yes, it sounds good, but also on the it's dumb and is easy to use. I don't always love the really complex kind of channel strips, of which Waves have made a couple themselves, where they're overly complicated with too many functions on it. You can argue a little bit about how it looks. I personally like the simplicity of it, that it actually looks like a piece of studio equipment. And they haven't gone too far out of the way to make the screws rusty and the paint peeling off. That's probably a level of vintage that I'm not interested in. But I think they're making a statement about how they want it to sound. You know, one person sounds great as another person's not so sounding great. But I do think anything that has drive in it these days is worth using, whether it be inherent in the plugin itself or a separate control. You know, it's something that probably Waves Omni-channel does best. Andrew Sheps's Omni-channel is one of the most used plugins I see by many, many people I work with. There's a couple of plugins, and that's one of those that jumps out because it has a lot of those kind of great features. I think that low-end boost on kick drums is insane on it. I also like the fact that the EQ defaults to all the places that we use. So this, I think, serves a lot of those functions, but even simpler still. Let's go on the snare and see what we can do. Interesting. It's really, as it's distorting it, it's highlighting the high end, isn't it? Bypass. On. It's evening out a little bit of that 700-ish, which is what he did on the vocal too. But adding a lot of crispness. So obviously the drive is mainly in the high and the high mids. So that's interesting. So I don't know if I'm going to boost the high end. I think I need to. See if I can put some body back on with the bass. Oh, nice. It didn't take much to make it sound really full. Here's 3 dB. Bypass. Ooh, I want to hear that with the whole drum mix. Bypassed. On. Ooh. So in the track, here's with it on, and then we'll stop and listen to it with it off. Let's bypass it. Back on. I really kind of like that. Now, obviously, each to their own. You may not like that, but I've always been a bit of a sucker for body on my snare. When I'm mixing through a console, I'll use a transient designer, but I'll also add quite a lot of weight using like API style EQs. I do love that extra low body on a snare drum. The EQ we had before this is an REQ. As you can see, I did boost at about 150 as well as the top. But I think this bass control, and I like the dumbness of the bass control, is really helping that. Let's go to a really dense section. So we'll go to the chorus and see whether it's still working now that we've got that extra body on it. Bypass. Back on. It does work because it's also adding the extra bite. Here it is, just soloed, the whole drum kit. Bypass it. Bypass again. I think I like what it's doing to the snare, but it's sending to the reverb like that. So I'm a little tempted to send the reverb only from the snare sample, which is a very Andy Wallace thing to do. So there's no bleed. So this is going before the snare bus. So it's coming from the snare sample to the reverb. Bypass it. Yeah, it's good. I'm going to send a bit more to the reverb. Bypass. Back on. So what's interesting is the initial snare hit. If you can hear it, but also I want to ask you to look at something for a second. So if you look over here at the snare bus, I'll make it bigger. So it's pretty big now. Put it in the middle. Have a listen and also have a look and see, you'll notice your ears are not deceiving you. The initial transient of the snare is actually considerably quieter now with the distortion on it. So you see there, it's hitting around about here, which is peaking at -6.7. Now let's bypass it and see where it's peaking now. It's actually over 1.8. So it's actually now considerably louder with it off. So what's happening is the initial transient is being eaten up by the distortion on the drive on the plugin. Interesting that, isn't it? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn it up because it's now perceived to be louder because the body of the snare is louder. So I'm actually going to bring it up. Bypass it. So that initial hit now is still louder, obviously on the original source, the initial pop, but the body of the snare is considerably louder. Put it in the track. That's bypassed. Now turn it on. Interesting how that works. That really shows how saturation works. Now I'm going to put some compression on it. Bypassed. So much politer when it's bypassed. Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, having an all-in-one plugin is kind of fun. When I first started mixing using plugins from coming away from a console, there were a couple of channel strips which I don't think are even made anymore. And I'm blanking on the first one I used to use. Maybe any of you that have been mixing in the box for a while will remember what it was called. But it was a channel strip. I want to say it was called the channel strip. And I used to use it all the time because it had everything there and it felt like I was on a console. And I think for many of us that grew up on consoles, having an all-in-one plugin is quite appealing. But those of you, of course, that didn't grow up, using a console and are now working almost exclusively in the box, which is most people, obviously, even the biggest mixers now have moved in the box. Using several independent plugins can also be really, really strong. So try it out. Download a review of it for yourself and see what you think. Let's move on and see what Mr. Joe Carrell thinks.
Hey guys, it's Joe Carrell, and I'm honored to be with you today, revealing the Waves Magma tube channel strip. This is my first time experimenting with it, so if I'm a little sloppy, I'm a little slow, forgive me because I'm getting to know it just as you guys are. But obviously, as you know, based on a tube circuit, they've turned it into a channel strip. So we have a high pass filter, 3-band EQ, expander, gate, that kind of a thing. So let's dive in together. So what I'm working on today, I've got kind of it's a rocker kind of based on a little bit of a retro feel. Think Led Zeppelin or something like that. But the guitar is the feature. There's not a vocal. So let me let you hear just a little bit of where we're at. And when Warren contacted me this afternoon, I was about 70% into this mix. And where I stopped was on the lead guitar solos. So that's where that's literally where we're going to start. We're going to dial them in real time. All right. So let's listen to it raw. Okay, it looks like I went ahead and put some reverb and stuff on there. So here's the raw sound. Okay, so one thing that I know for a fact is from having the tube, the tube only, the drive saturation plug-in in the Magma series, is that this drive feature is really, really cool on electric guitars. Let's let that tube, do its thing. Ready? Okay, we'll bring it down and try to level compensate just a little bit. Here's before. Here's after. A little more bite, a little more anger, which of course is exactly what this song needs. Let's go ahead and roll off the extreme bottom end too. So let's, hearing it in the mix, I'm kind of hearing, we need a little shine. We need a little shine just to make it cut through. But we want angry shine. We don't want anything too pretty. So let's go somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 cycles here, just a couple dB. dig that. Now let's add a little high end. Oh, interesting. So that high band you can hear, that's not like only like 10 or 12K being boosted. That's on down into, on down an octave or two below that. All right, here's before, and this is dry, no effects. After with some tube grit and a little EQ. Okay, now normally, just because we're playing, I normally would not compress a guitar like that, but we have a compressor right here, so let's do it. Looks like we have our standard setting and then a smash. Let's just hear the regular. I actually don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. It's slow. It's slow enough of an attack that I still am getting some bite and some transit information out of the guitar, but nonetheless a fun test. So let's put those delay and reverb back on so our artist isn't mad at me for letting his guitar solo. Sorry, Kyle. This is Kyle Lynn Grant, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. Kyle Lynn Grant. Look him up. Got some great banging stuff. Very cool. Okay, let's listen to it. One of the next things I would think of is let's hear it on bass. Let's take a zeroed out channel here that's all clean and at its default state, and let's listen to the bass as recorded. Okay, I like it. It's already got some grit, right? It's already got some cojones, let's say. But this is heavy, so we really going to want that aggression to make the attack of the bass. Kind of at times he's playing the same rhythm as the electric guitar, so we're going to want them to kind of to be together. Okay, I'm going to settle on right in there. Let's do our makeup gain compensation. Cool. Let's use this mid band to push that forward a little more, somewhere around 1-2K. Okay, cool. That bass is already highly compressed. So let's don't even add any compression to that. We'll try it on something else. But let's listen to it in the mix before and after, okay? Let's bypass it here. Let's add a little bottom end. I love it. I love the tube overdrive. I mean, that sound is, gosh, that's the sound of so many records that we grew up with that we loved. Let's, I think one of my favorite things on drums to test a new plugin on is overheads, because it's the whole kit. To me, it's such an important element. I take my time and I focus on the kick drum and the snare drum, the close mics, but the way it all gels together in the overheads is a really big deal for me. So let's go to factory default and hear the overheads as recorded. Okay, great. Let's start right with the gain. Let's overdrive it. Let's roll everything below 60 off. Okay, cool. One more time without the drive. Okay, you hear where the snare drum is at. I mean, it's clean, obviously, but you hear where the snare drum is at compared to the tom fill and the ride cymbal. Hear that? It's ducking the snare when it kicks in, and it's adding that grit to it. Let's do a little gain compensation. We're going for a vintage kind of, I'm not going to say dark, but darker, sound. A little influenced by the 70s, not really the ultra modern bright rock thing. But for the purpose of this demo, let's boost the top end and hear what it's doing. Nice. All right, now this is a great place to try out the compressor. So let's leave it in regular. And let's get some, because what I like to do is take that snare drum, which is usually pretty loud, and kind of push it down into the ambience of the kit, with my overhead. So let's do it. I like that. Okay, so it's got a slow enough of an attack that we're still getting the transient to come through. So I can see that being cool on like a snare drum, right? That electric guitar that we talked about a while ago. But let's try it on Smash. For example, let's think of an SSL channel strip. Like on the 4000, we have our regular attack and our fast attack. I love on overheads to use fast attack because I really want to clamp down on that stuff in a different way than I do on the close mics. So this will tell us a lot. Let's do this. Okay, that's what I was hoping. Okay, so we basically have two compressors here, it sounds like to me. Okay, the other one had a slower attack. This is definitely a faster attack, but I hear the release being different. That's a faster release. Let's listen to this one. And let's yeah, obviously the ratio is higher too. Let's settle right there with just a little less of the high end because of all the writing on the crash cymbal, and let's hear that in the mix. No treatment. Dull, boring. Let's hear it now. Very cool. All right, so my thoughts on it, after just playing with it on a couple sources, is that the drive feature is worth the price of admission. We could get pretty to a point, like in that 3 and 4 range. We go on up on the other side. We keep going up there above 5. We get up there in the 6, the 7, 8, and we get some nasty but really, really cool tube grit that pushes the upper mids out in the mix. So we can really use that to our advantage on a lot of things, really. So that's really, really cool. I love that it's got a high pass filter in it. On the EQ, my thought is that it's a pretty sounding EQ. It's not, we get the aggression and the grit from the drive, but the EQ itself is a little on the smoother side, which is good. The beauty and the beast, right? So I think this would be really versatile in that regard. I think we could use it on acoustic pianos, acoustic guitars, things that we want, maybe some sparkle and some pretty type high end. But combined with the drive, we get just enough nasty and grit if they're in there if we want to. So anyway, guys, that's my thought on the Tube Magma channel strip from Waves. Thank you for watching.
Yo, what up? It's your girl AMAC here doing my first plugin review with Produce Like a Pro, and today we're going to be going over the Magma channel strip from Waves. I'm really excited about it, so let's get right into it. So the first thing I like to do before I try a plugin for the first time is go over the user manual. Most plugins have them, and Waves is really great about it. You just go up here to this corner, and you can click on the user manual. This one's really simple. It's only a few pages. Gives you an introduction, a little breakdown about what it is. And then we get to the interface where it goes over what all the knobs are. But what I really love about it is that we get into the control section. And that really talks about what these knobs are really doing and the thinking behind them. especially when you're talking about the EQ section. Where does the shelf start? What its range is? How wide of a cue does things have? And then same thing here in the dynamic section. I just really like to know what these knobs are doing before I even start to mess around with them. So let's get back to Pro Tools. Today, I'm going to be using the Magma channel strip on my 808. In this particular production, it's really lacking a lot of upper mid frequencies, and I've been working with saturation to try to bring out some more harmonic information. Let's take a listen to what my mix sounds like currently. Cool. So I really like the balance, but I really just still need to bring out some more upper harmonics. I'm going to try to use the Magma channel strip to do that. I'm going to mute my 808 here and open up this channel. So what I'm doing on the 808 that you just heard is that I have the original signal and I'm doing a little saturation there, but then I duplicated it and have a parallel crunch on it. Just using the Magma here, let's just start turning some knobs. So cool. I was bypassing it there after I had turned the drive back to 0 just to see what it did with it, just running through. And it gave it a little space to me, made it a little fatter. The drive was dope because until I pushed it to like 8, it really didn't give me a crunch and it just felt really warm. I like that a lot. Let's keep going. Wow, so the high pass filter, that goes up to, what is that, 110? That was great. It really did a nice job of shaving off the lows and letting, the top of the 808 come through. And I think that's going to be really helpful for what I'm trying to accomplish here. So let's just keep moving on with that in mind and go to the EQ section. So there's not a lot of, high frequency information in this 808, which is, something we're talking about, right? When I went to like plus 13, I heard a little bit, but that's about it. I'm really excited to try out this mid frequency because it goes from 100 hertz up to 5,000 hertz. So that's a huge difference, and I'm really excited to see what it's going to do here. Really cool. So, I'm trying out a lot of this with the full mix playing because I just kind of want to see what it's bringing out and where that can sit in the mix. But that sounds really cool. Let's listen again. So definitely something I'm looking for in this mix is to help bring out like the more kind of kick slap part of the 808, because there are times when just the 808 is going and there is no kick. So that's really great. And, that's, again, more upper frequencies that we're looking for here. I really loved this. I loved when I was turning it up at 100 as well. Let's put it back. Let's try this lower band and take the high pass filter back off. Cool. I'm really loving that. I'm just kind of messing around with all the knobs now and trying to, accomplish what I'm looking to accomplish here. What I really am finding that I like about this plugin, it just sounds really warm. It feels just like a nice little hug to me, which is something you want out of a tube channel strip anyway. Yeah, I'm really liking this a lot. All right, well, on this particular track, Expand there really made it feel a lot smaller to me. The compressor sounded really nice. It did a good job of just kind of gluing it together, on this mix, especially for like the main sound of the 808. I definitely want it to be a little more bop, bop, bop. But for a parallel, that might be really cool. What I ended up doing when I first messed around with this was I already had the main 808 and then I had a parallel crunch, right? But as I've said many times in this video, I was really looking for the upper mid frequencies. And when I found like originally like that 5K mid pushed up with the high pass filter to 110, like it was just giving me that slap, that I wanted and just kind of taking up that space. But now the original 808 sound and the duplicate parallel that I've created are both in stereo. So I thought for this, I would actually make a mono aux track, and then I would parallel that way. So I'm just going to make that active, make my original 808s active, and show you what I did there. So I ended up turning the drive to 5. My high pass filter is all the way at 110. I turned the high shelf up here because once you push the drive and you push that mid, like there were high frequencies now. Actually, let me show you really quickly. So this EQ is the parallel I created, and then this EQ is what's on the original 808 sound. So original 808, parallel. So as you can see here, I mean, that high pass filter is just so good. It really carved so much right here. And look at all of the information that this has created compared to the original 808. I mean, that's like, 4 dBs of top end that I just didn't have before. So awesome. And now, I get to mix them in. And why I went with a parallel aux was because I just really wanted it to be center. I wanted it to be its own thing. I've already got, a wide 808 from the original stem. Let's just listen to the parallel that I created with the Magma channel strip. So it just gives me a nice grit on top and that slap of the kick of the 808. Really, really nice. I really love this plugin. You should definitely get it. Now let me add the 808s back in. Now that's without the Magma channel Carrell. Just really gives me such a good top end slap. I'm so happy that this opportunity came up while I was working on this mix because it really, really came in handy and worked out perfectly. So let's hear it in the mix, and I'll go in and out of having that mono parallel there. So, look, it just adds an energy. And I also forgot to mention, right, while we're going over this, I also not only had the high pass filter on, but I also turned the bass, the low EQ shelf all the way down as well. And that gave it, that big slope that I showed you on the EQs, right? And then I'm also compressing it, just to tighten it up and get it together there. So overall, A+ on the Magma channel strip. I can't wait to try it on some other stuff. And that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoy it. Peace.
Hi everybody, Adam Steele here, Reaper Guy, and as you can see, I've got 3 copies of the Tube channel strip running in Reaper, and with the new V14 of the Waves, I've got these blown up to 200% on the GUI, so you can see this nice and clear on the 4K screen here, which is very useful if you're someone who works on a big screen like I do, because it saves me a lot of time in production only using one screen for everything. But I'm using these as kind of bus group enrichers kind of thing, and I'm really enjoying this. This is a track that I wrote recently that sounds like this without any of the Tube channel strips. And then one by one I will turn on all 3 of these. Now, I'm usually a really technical, kind of nerdy kind of guy, and if you give me like an EQ with 19 different controls and a compressor with 7 different settings, I'm usually quite happy. But in this case, I'm really actually quite enjoying the simplicity, and kind of contrary to being the massive nerd, when you give me valve gear, I do like it to have a relatively simple set of controls, like, opto compressors like the LA2A has generally got like input, gain reduction, and if you're lucky, it's got one of those low-end controls, which this doesn't need. So we've got our 3-band EQ, which on the drums, I've done a bit of a smiley curve thing. I've done a gentle couple of dB of high push, 1.6 dB of low, because they're very forgiving shelves, which means that I'm not having to struggle with going, oh, now that's introduced a kind of a low-mid hump or anything like that. It just works. On the bass was a little bit thin on the low end, so I've just added a good 3.5 dB there. And I've given them all a tiny bit of expansion just in case anything pops out, and pushed the compressor on all of them actually, but especially on the bass. The bass, let's solo the bass, because the bass had a lot going on. This was the bass before, especially on this middle section, you'll hear some things. So it's quite a driven sound. It's really quite kind of aggressive and mid-forward, which In context of the mix, you can't really tell as much, but by putting in the Magma channel strip, I've pushed the drive even further, which you would think would make it just sound more aggressive, but it doesn't. It's a drive and a kind of an overall spectrum thing. And especially with the low end push and the compressor being relatively high and just getting a little bit going there. That's without, a little bit thin, and that's with. And you can see my VU meter there is happily sitting around 0, which means if I start to push the level into that a bit harder, or if I start to push the drive quite hard, that will probably start to really get fuzzy, fizzy, and clip, which isn't what I want. But I've brought the faders down by a few dB on all of these to compensate for the fact that I've pushed the drive, pushed the compression a little bit. I've even pushed the low end a little bit on the guitars, which surprised me, but it's so forgiving that with the 60 Hertz filter in there as well, the guitars that were a little bit kind of pokey, and very pokey with this. But turn that off. Almost radio affected. Turn that back on. Suddenly I've got some kind of warmth back in the low end of the guitars. While still having the ultra low end, the rumbly stuff, very much under control. And the drums, which are not programmed drums, those were recorded at Middle Farm Studios. Again, listening back to them, I got the balance right the first time. But by turning on the channel strip, that low end kind of shelf there's just giving that kick a little bit more authority without it being bloated. That's an impressive thing to do. If I push the drive, it'll go too far. I can probably push the drive a little further than I originally imagined. Let's try it in the mix. No, I've backed it off not because it's a bad sound, but because the overheads are being smashed so hard that means that nice extra drive has brought too much cymbal in, so I just brought it back to suit. But yeah, you're probably going to see something like this a lot more on my either group buses or a few of my mixed channels, because something that just is easy to work with, quick, and gets results like that. I love valve sounds. I can't afford to have every channel in my studio be a valve channel, because then, you know, electricity costs being what they are in Europe and the UK right now. This makes up for that, and it does it really well. So there you go. Back to you.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you, everyone who contributed to this video. I really appreciate it when I get to see other people in our industry test out the plugins as well. So you're not just getting my one opinion. I enjoyed the plugin, and I think for those of you that want something all-in-one that's really simple and dumb and easy to use, this could be the plugin for you. As ever, I highly recommend that you review it and try it out yourself and see how you feel before you buy anything. Thanks, everyone. So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Adios. Goodbye. Tschüss.